All right, 2 weeks ago, I started a series that's going to be a little bit scattered. It's not going to be, week after week, but a little bit scattered, where I quoted a rabbi called Ed Friedman, and he suggested that people, groups, and even societies at the moment are being driven by fear and anxiety, but then went on to say, if we want to be influential and help make our society a better society, rather than be driven by fear and anxiety, we need to work out who we are and be driven by our core values instead. And so we started to ponder that question as a community of faith here. What are our core values? What is driving us in our decision making, in the way that we interact with each other, in the way that we interact with the wider community? What are the things that shape us and drive us forward? Now, in our evening service 2 weeks ago, we actually pulled out a whiteboard. We can be a little bit more interactive because there's not quite as many people. And we pulled out a whiteboard and had a bit of a back and forwards trying to guess, before we even started the series, what people thought our core values was. Do you want to know what our young people thought our core values were? Yes? Yes? All right, well, this is what they thought. They thought we were a caring community who love each other, volunteers who serve, passionate and creative and musical. We are Christ followers or Christ sharers. We are worshippers, accepting, justice-focused, and we are peaceful and people who pray. Not bad a list, is it? I was quite impressed, particularly because 2 weeks ago I focused on that point about being worshippers, and so I thought, well, they got that one that I wanted to focus on. And today I wanted to focus on another one which was on their list as well. We are people who serve. That's part of our core value, that we are not only a community who worships, we are a community of volunteers. We are people who not only served, but we are shaped by the way that we serve and love one another. Would you agree with that statement? I do think that at its core, not only now, but throughout its history, going right back to, St Margaret's and Trinity sort of time, that we have always been a community that have been people who serve each other, serve God, and serve the wider community. I'm going to just pause for a second here and show you a video that I found actually about 13 years ago, hence the poor resolution on this video. But I will show you this video. It only goes for about 90 seconds, and then I'll explain it. Thanks, Mike. All right, that might cut a little bit too close to home, but I don't believe that it's true. For the people who are watching online, I think you missed the first part, but you got the end of it, just the super pastor doing everything in the life of the church. Here in this church, I am not the super pastor who does everything, but rather we have an amazing community of people who do mow the lawn or run the kids' church or lead the Bible studies or serve in the kitchen, who prepares communion, who answers phones, there's a whole bunch of people that do stuff. I've got a challenge for you. I'm going to make you talk to each other just for 90 seconds. I'm going to tell you up front what I want you to do. Just with the people around you, can you come up with 20 names of people who volunteer or serve here within the community of Tuck in the 90 seconds that I'm going to give you? Can you do that? Just count it up on your fingers and see if you can get above 20. Are you ready? I'm going to start my clock. Those people at home can still play the game, but you'll just have to think of it yourself. Ready, set, go. We're only 40 seconds into our 90 seconds and this conversation's starting to die. Is that because you're running out of names or that you all hit 20? Yeah, well, let's stop at 45 seconds. Was that hard? No. And that's the point I'm trying to make, is that there is a lot of people who serve in this church. When we did Imagining Hope about 18 months ago, I actually sat down to try and work it out. And I gave up when I was over 100 individuals serving and I was over 400 different ways that people were serving. 400, because some people serve in more than one role. I was above 400 instances of people serving and over 100 individuals. There's a lot of people who serve. And so whilst you can hassle me about the super pastor video later, my point is that there is a lot of people who serve in the life of the church, which is what I want to try and say, that from the beginning of times, the Trinity and St Margaret's times, there has always been a lot of people who have given their time and their talents to serve both within and beyond our church. It is who we are. But it's also a biblical principle of serving as well. I can throw up a heap of Bible verses on the screen here. Jesus in Mark 10:45 said that he did not come to be served, but to serve. Actually, in John 13, Jesus goes on, washes his disciples' feet and says, I do this so I'm giving you an example to follow of what it means to be servers. In 1 Corinthians 12, Paul says that we are like a body that has different parts, and we've each been given different gifts so that each one of us can serve or play our part in the body. Play our part in God's work. James said that faith has to be more than just words. It has to be more than just belief. Faith is actually when you live out your faith in actions. And in our Bible reading for today, Jesus reminds us that we have been chosen, that we have been appointed to bear fruit that will last, and that we bear that fruit through loving actions, So living out our faith is not only something that we do because it's a value of the church. Serving is not only something that we do because it's a biblical principle that Jesus gives us to do. I also think that serving is helpful for us as well. It's actually important for our own faith development and our own discipleship. In my last church, I had one of the key people of the church come and have a conversation with me, and he sort of said, I feel like I'm getting in the way of other people serving, and I need to pull back from the serving that I'm doing so that other people can step up, which I don't always think is a good idea, but he was convinced that this is what he needed to do. And so he pulled back from everything. He resigned from all the teams and committees he was on, he dropped off all rosters, he cleared everything. A couple of months later, I'm having a conversation with him. He's going, I'm really struggling in my faith at the moment. God just seems so far away at the moment. And I didn't quite have the right words to say at the time, but I've thought about it a lot since. And if I could go back and have that conversation again, I would say, well, of course you're feeling that way, because he was a person whose faith was nurtured and grown through the things that he did. And so that idea of saying, I'm going to stop living out my faith in actions and then suddenly discovering, well, I don't feel close to God at the moment. As I said, I've thought about it a lot since. And I would suggest for many of us, actually the way that we serve is helpful for our own spirituality, is helpful for our own spiritual growth. And that's why I think that Jesus invites and encourages us to be serving people, not only because it's helpful for the people that we serve and for the kingdom of God, but it's actually helpful for us too. It keeps us spiritually healthy and growing. I don't think anybody would disagree with anything I said so far, would you? You're all on board with this? Yep. I just think there's one other perspective I want to introduce this morning, and it's probably summed up with a statement that I've heard just a few times. It's something like this: I just think I'm doing too much at the moment. I need to take out some time for myself and my family. I'm not trying to say this to make anyone feel guilty if you think that too. I actually think that's a good thing to do, and I applaud that sort of thinking. I just think that sometimes it's worrisome that if people are feeling it's a discipline of serving God and serving others, that's a thing that has to be cut back on in order to make time for themselves and their family. I think that maybe there's another approach that can give a better outcome for yourself in this. When I was in my 20s, I attended a conference where one of the speakers was a bloke called Dr. Jeff Cornish. He was a POW in World War II and had an amazing story, a very moving story of his work in the camps, POW camps, being a doctor, and actually had an opportunity to escape but decided not to because he wanted to continue to help people through his medical expertise in this camp. He shared a concept about what does it mean to find balance in our lives. And this is 25 years ago I heard this, and yet it's still very impacting upon me now, what he shared. It was a simple exercise. I know this is too small on the screen. I will post this in our Facebook group, but I'll explain it as I go. He basically had a scale of 4 different lines all coming off from a central point, and he talked about how we need to think about the way that our lives are balanced. And he had 4 things. He had physical, mental, spiritual and social. So for the physical, it's things like, how well are you walking at the moment? Score yourself on 0 to 5 of how well are you doing physical exercise. Are you walking? Are you going to the gym? Are you eating healthily? Are you getting enough sleep? Well, that sort of physical stuff. What about the mental side of your health? Are you doing any study at the moment? Do you do any reading? How do you stimulate your mind with crosswords or strategic computer games, which I believe are fantastic for stimulating your mind? What about spiritually? What are you doing to keep yourself spiritually healthy? Are you going to worship? Are you having those good conversations with other people about spiritual issues? Or what about social at the moment? What do you do to connect with other people? Do you go anywhere where you get to meet new people? Or have you already got your set circles that you don't go beyond anymore? What are you doing to develop your social health as well? And this is the thing that blew me away. Do you want to try this? Are you doing it in your head right now? Are you plotting your 4 points on the 4 things for where you're up to with your physical, your mental, your spiritual and your social? Because if you do, what Dr. Cornish then went on to say is that join up the dots and make a shape. This is mine at the moment. And his point was, it's not about the size of the square. It's about the shape. And he said, if it looks really wonky, maybe your life is not very balanced at the moment. It might be one thing to say, I'm going great spiritually at the moment, but if your physical health is nothing, it's sort of like going, is that really helpful for you at the moment? And so what his encouragement was not necessarily trying to push all of them further out, but getting it to be more square-like. What would it mean to maybe spend less time being social and maybe doing a little bit more walking, or maybe combining the both and walk with friends so you can be social and getting up your thing. So his point was, it doesn't even matter if the square gets a bit smaller. The key is to get it more balanced. So you got that sort of an idea? I want to take this another step forward today, because I think we can apply the same thing when it comes to serving. And I'm wondering whether we can actually have a similar map for what does it mean to serve. And I've come up with 4 different scales here. Well, how do we love, or if using the Bible reading, the words from the Bible reading today, Jesus talked about loving as well as serving. So if we talk about the 4 scales being time for ourselves, we all need to rest and relax and watch Netflix. That is an important thing. But what about time for significant relationships, investing in our partner or in our family or in other people who are close to us? What about time for serving others or serving God, however that might be, giving of ourselves to other people? And what does it mean to invest in our time for work or other things, whatever that might be, doing stuff around the house or whatever? If you sort of put it in those 4 categories, I don't think we can do this off time spent, because, the work one would dominate. We would end up with something like this, because a lot of us, invest a lot of time in our employment or in the things that we have to do week by week. But rather we might go, all right, on a sense of, are we spending more or less time as we should in these areas? If you did that on your scale of 1 to 10, what would it look like for you? Would it be a square? If you try and plot, are you spending enough time on yourself at the moment or not enough? Enough time on significant relationships or not enough? Enough time on your work or employment or whatever you'd have to do week by week or not? And enough time in serving God or serving others through loving actions? What would it look like? Would it be square? Are you doing it in your head at the moment? Notice I'm not making you do this with the people around you, because I think this is quite personal, and for some of us it's hitting home. Like, this is my one. That is not square at all. That is not square at all, and actually embarrassingly so. No, that's not right, is it? I don't know how I got up with that one. But anyway, but the point I'm trying to make is that if we are out of whack, if we're unbalanced, not only in our own personal life, if you do the spiritual, social, mental and physical, but if we are out of whack in the different ways that we are investing our time, what do we need to do to get that more balanced? And so when somebody says, I need more time for myself, or I need more time for my family, I go, yes, you probably do. But is the way of achieving that taking time off serving others or loving others in loving actions? Or maybe we might have to do the hard thing of going, am I investing far too much time in my employment? And maybe that's where I need to shave off a little bit more time to invest in other areas. I don't know, these are just my thoughts. I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are later. But I do come back to the point that I made last week. If we are a community that holds up volunteerism and serving and loving others as a core value of who we are, then what does that mean to reflect that in the way that we live? The example I used last week, our young people are looking at us as mentors, as people who want to see how we live these things out. What are they seeing within us? If we want them to discover the joy of serving, because let's face it, sometimes serving others and serving God can be fun. It is. Like, I had a few people this week talking about that they miss the flea market. John, did you hear that? People are missing the flea market. And one of the comments that they said is that they said, we're just missing that fun time of being together and serving on a stall together or setting up or packing down, because there was some intergenerational stuff that happened there as well. People are missing the joy of serving. Now, I did have an almost tempted to run a mission fair after today going, hey, if you want to serve, here is 100 things that you can sign up for. I didn't do that today. But I will say that if you do want to serve, opportunities to serve, please talk to either me or to anybody and say, hey, what can I do in this life of the church? There are lots of ways of serving that we would love to tell you about. But as I said, I do sit there with the challenge. I forgot to quote a Bible verse. Can I just jump back a tiny bit? When I was talking about the joy of serving, did you notice in the Bible reading that Jesus said, I say all this to you and I don't call you servants. I'm not telling you to do this because you have to or it's a duty or something like that. I'm doing it because I want to call you my friends. This is what we do as a family. We help each other, we serve each other, we work for the best of not only people in the family, but people beyond in the community. That's what we do. That's why we call each other friends. But this is my challenge for today. If this is the core value of our community, then how do we make this shine? How do we make it something that really, is a gem that is sparkling within our community? How do we make sure that our life balance is not out of whack, but rather that we have the time and the space and the energy to invest in loving and in serving and in helping others? And as we work on this, may we all discover that serving not only helps ourselves to grow, but serving can be a blessing to others and to God and to a wider community.